So joining us as guest professor for Investing 101 this week is Keith Woodwell. Keith is the securities regulator for the state of Utah, and I might mention, because I really like this part,
I know, I do
he's
too.
a former CIA guy.
I know.
Yeah.
Hey, Keith.
Hello, Keith. Sleazy tactics. First Cole, his spiel, his pitch to get suckers involved in these small stocks is nothing new. Boiler rooms have been around for years, but introduced the internet, and it seems like there's more ways to get victimized here.
And they do it through messaging boards where there's a lot of different sites where people go to find information about investments, and they can share information, and it's a powerful tool. But unfortunately, the con men out there know that this is a tool that they can manipulate to their benefit. So they're operating on those sites where they have a target audience that is already willing to listen. These are people who are individual investors. They're already interested in researching companies and finding the next big thing.
But Keith, at what point along the continuum exactly would this kid Cole, for example, have crossed the line, you know, when he went from hyping a stock to actually breaking the law?
Well, the hallmarks of a typical pump and dump scheme is when you take some kind of controlling interest in the companies who share your offering or trying to sell to others. And my understanding in this case is that he had about 50% interest in the company at one point, and you cross a certain threshold, then the threshold's actually pinned at 30%. Once you reach that point, you have affirmative obligations to disclose your own positions.
Which in this case, clearly Cole did not do. But you do see it all the time on the financial shows, especially 24/7 news channels. Guests have to disclose now when they own a certain stock before they can hype it or poo-poo it.
Right, the analysts that come on and they say, we own this in our fund. But you know, it is creepy, really, when you realize that anybody with half a brain can do this online, what Cole was doing.
It's the glory of the internet and the age that we live in, where almost anyone can pretend to be anyone else that they want to be. You know, the internet affords you great power and great anonymity, but they know how to leverage these tools that the internet provides to reach the biggest audience they possibly can. You know, unfortunately, the reality, I think, Pam, is that the SEC and the state regulators, we don't have a very high batting average when it comes to stopping these pump and dump schemes. Most of them can operate in the shadows using the internet, and they're basically anonymous. And unfortunately, I think it's the minority of the cases that we're actually able to successfully investigate and prosecute.
And that brings us right back to these highly visible, influential TV or radio stock jocks.
You know, hey, even go beyond that. Billionaire investor George Soros, okay, he hardly ever says out loud what he's doing, but when he does, oh boy.
You see that there really is acceleration in credit growth.
Everybody's listening, and you know and I know that people are copycatting.
So Keith, the litmus test is that 30 or 50% ownership stake in a company. That's the line in the sand. But at the end of the day, still a lot of gray area here.
Yeah, I think even with George Soros, Jim Cramer, it doesn't matter who it is. They all have their own spin and their own take on things. And what happened to the investment banking industry on Wall Street? And there's been a lot of talk in the regulatory community about who took down Bear Stearns and how did that happen.
Exactly. Again, big rumors, right?
In fact, Bear Stearns dropped about 98% in a couple of weeks. You know, so you have to question who's behind these stories, where did they originate, who stands to gain. Unfortunately, I think it's a reality that there is some level of manipulation that happens in the stock market. And the only protection, I think, for investors is to do your own due diligence. Don't get sucked into something that you do not understand. It's one thing to get ideas from people who are prominent in the industry or have a track record where they've made billions of dollars investing. But in the end, you need to do your own due diligence. And that starts with the very basics. It's the things people, frankly, don't like to do. It's reading company financials. It's actually reading through a prospectus for yourself and making a decision based on the real facts, not somebody else's spin on those facts.
Yep, rumors do have influence. So true, your advice. And such a basic rule, and one that we sometimes seem to stray from. And Keith, I'm going to ask you something. You ought to know. Any super secret agent stuff that you can share with us about stock fraud from your former life in the CIA?
Well, I can't share a lot of the details. It was a fun job, but I do have permission from the president to brief Chloe on some of the details if she's interested further.
Then we'll get it from her. Thank you, Keith.
Okay.